What is going on, everyone? This is Ryan with Automatic Comics. And if you saw my preview video about a week ago, you know that there was another big Heritage signature auction that just kicked off on January 9th. So that first day, session one has the biggest comics. You've also got session two, which is all the big original art and everything. But we're going to talk about session one, which is the big expensive comic books. Now, I did not price every book in session one like I've done in some of the prior videos. In this one, I priced 113 of the 175 items that sold in this session. So I feel like that's a pretty good representative sample. And I'll say, when I first started scanning through the results, I was thinking that maybe this auction was a little more on the weaker side. But then when I actually ran through all the numbers, surprisingly impressive sales results. Now, there are always going to be highs and lows, and we'll talk about all of that. But of the 113 books that I priced, they sold for just over $3.2 million. That is an average of $28,661 per book. So that just gives you an idea of the level of books and items that are selling in the session one. It's top tier stuff. It's cool stuff. Like you can see on the screen right there. I mean, there's an Action Comics 1, an Action Comics 7, All-Star 8, first Wonder Woman. We've got that Black Cat 9.4 file copy. You got a Captain America 1. Now, I'll say this auction did not have any item that was like that big $1 million item. There are some pretty incredible pieces of original art. So we'll see what those end up going for, like the Amazing Spider-Man 194 cover, the first Black Cat. That's going to be a big one. That's probably going to be the biggest item in this auction. So before we get into individual books and how those performed, let's talk about each of the eras, because I break it out by the eras that Heritage breaks it out. So gold, silver, bronze, and then modern is the one that's a little weird because they do from 1980 until today. So that one also includes copper and a little bit of late bronze. But the Golden Age, priced out 70 books from the Golden Age. 60% of those beat my estimate. If I see numbers above 50%, to me, that's good. Like 50% means that everything is status quo. Half of them are going above my estimates, half are going below. So 60% of Golden Age beat my estimates. Silver Age, 75% beat my estimates. Priced out 24, 18 beat my estimates. That's something I was seeing in the earlier auctions as well, late last year, that Silver Age was starting to pick up, was doing quite a bit better than I had seen before. Bronze Age, 64% beat my estimates. Priced out 14 books, 9 of them beat my estimates. And then for the modern books, now remember, as we move to newer and newer books, there tend to be less in this session because they just aren't expensive enough. There were only 5 that I priced, only 2 beat my estimates, so 40%. So that one was a little bit, you could say, an underperformer, but it's one of those where there's so few books that I'm pricing, it's a little hard to make any type of judgment call there. But man, like silver and bronze really coming out swinging. Like gold, I typically see anywhere from, around 60 to 65%. So that was status quo, but silver and bronze really, really solid. And I mean, I would love to see prices to start to take a turn. It's like, it's always kind of depressing seeing prices go down and down and down every year. So pretty impressive, in my opinion, to see the silver and bronze for the last couple auctions been doing really well. Now, let's start getting into some of the specific books, how specific books performed. I mean, the first one, I'm just going to talk about this pulp because this is that pulp, Weird Tales it's called number 118 on the label, but this is the Batwoman cover. This is like the one pulp I want, and I keep hoping it's going to go down in price, and it keeps performing really, really well. I had this one going for $30,000, sold for $31,200. And so again, just a little bit above what I estimated for it, but just not seeing any weakness. This book has come up for sale quite a few times in the 775 range and keeps performing really well. Then we had the Action Comics number 1. Sold for $384,000. I had this one going for $375,000. What I've generally been seeing with the restored Action ones, kind of like mid grades, they can't seem to get above that $400,000 mark. That's what that 0.5 Universal sold for. So it kind of seems like that's been the ceiling for those books. So it just feels like it's been relatively easy to estimate what these are going to go for. So $384,000. almost exactly what I expected. I mean, it's a beautiful copy, but yeah, a restored A4, so professional restoration, but a fair amount of it on this book. So now the first really big surprise, like strong sale, was this Action Comics #7. So this is the second cover appearance of Superman. This is one of the very in-demand books. I believe it's worth more than his second appearance just because it's that cover. People really want this book, and it does not come up for sale very often. This is a conserved 6.0. The conservation is that the cover has been cleaned. This copy has actually sold before. It had a prior sale of 40,500. And when you look at other grades for this book, now it doesn't come up often, but it seemed like other grades had been pretty flat. So I had been expecting this book to sell for about 47,500, sold for $75,000. This beat my estimate by 58%. Huge sale. I don't know if this has to do with the Superman trailer, but definitely seems like that Superman trailer does seem to have had some impacts on a few books, and which we'll talk about later too. But $75,000 for the second cover appearance of Superman for a conserved copy. And if you're not familiar with conservation, basically it's specific types of restoration they will give the conserved label to. But wow, that was a big sale. Now let's keep going through. I mean, now I can't talk about all 113 books. It would just take too long. I'm going to try to call out some of the what books I really liked seeing, books that I really enjoyed, and some of those really exceptional sales. And another one was this one. Again, something that, there's been talk of a Supergirl movie. It's Action Comics 252, a 9.0, sold for $48,000. This was a new record for this book. The prior record was 34,500. I had it going for 38,000, went for 48,000, 26% above my estimate. Again, big sale for this book. Sold for almost as much as the 9.2 that sold last year. That's what was really impressive with this sale. So yeah, this is a really tough booking grade. You can see down here, there are 10 and 9.0, only 4 higher. I think 9.2 is the highest. Yeah, there's 4 9.2s. So it's technically the second highest grade for this book. But yeah, really, really impressive sale again for this one. All right, then we had, just because got to talk about the big keys. Got All-Star #8, first appearance of Wonder Woman. I had this one going for 59,000. So this one went a little below my estimate. It was 6% below my estimate, 55,200. It had a prior record of 87,000. It has definitely come down since the hype of this book around the Wonder Woman movies. Really, the peaks for this book were largely even a little before the comic boom. I mean, there were some big sales during the comic boom too, but yeah, this one a little bit of a disappointment, but not too bad, especially considering the number of copies we've seen of this book come up for sale recently. If we jump over to GPA and we look at All-Star #8, there have been a surprisingly large number of copies of this major key come up for sale. I mean, look at this, right around this range here. I mean, that is a lot of sales for All-Star #8. I mean, it's, again, like compared to something like a modern book, it's not a lot. But for a book like this, like a Golden Age major key, this is a lot of sales. So I think that does have an impact as well. You kind of overwhelm the market a little bit. Now, I was definitely watching the Black Cat #50. This is that classic Lee Elias cover because I have a 9.0 file copy. This is the 9.4 file copy, sold for 55,200. Now, this one I had going for 55,000. I was pretty much right on the mark. I mean, it was less than 1% over my estimate. We haven't had a lot of high grade copies. There was a 9.6, I believe, that sold for like 70,000, something along those lines. Maybe last year or 2 years ago. So this one kind of right between the 9.0 that is sold and then the 9.6. So 55,000, solid sale for this book. I was happy to see the sale for this book. That's a very nice number, and it's a great looking copy. All right, so we got the Cap 1. I'll talk briefly about the Cap 1 because I had made a specific video about that book. Because the interesting thing with this one was the label, where the grader's notes or the restoration notes were pushed to the back cover. And so you can see it's like the back cover says all 3 edges trimmed, staples replaced, reinforced. And so it was something that just you wondered if maybe somebody might miss some of those big pieces of work that were done to this book. But this was an 8.0, sold for $72,000. I had it going for 75,000. So it actually went a little below what I thought, but just 4%. I mean, that's one bit at these prices. And so those types of differences, I don't really think too much about. I mean, it's pretty much spot on. And so to me, a solid sale again for this major key book. All right, let's keep moving on. Now we've got Crime Suspense Stories number 22. This one was a little bit of a disappointment. This is a 8.5 Gaines file copy, classic Johnny Craig cover. I had this book going for $35,000. Its prior record was $40,800. You can see here it sold for $31,200. So went about 11% below my estimate and about 20%, 23%, something like that below its record. So definitely a book that has come down a little bit. Like I said, I am a huge fan of this book in terms of long-term purchases. There's just always demand for it. A lot of copies have come up for sale again recently, and that definitely can have some impacts on the price. But I mean, again, 11% below my estimate, not a huge shift on the pricing for that book. So the next one here, this one was right in line. So this is Fantastic Four number 48, first appearance of Silver Surfer, first cameo appearance of Galactus, signed by Stan Lee, a shockingly clear signature by Stan Lee. We'll take a look at that one real quick. I mean, look at this. Like, you can never make things out like this. I mean, it looks like it is a finer point pen that was, maybe used for that, but definitely a much more clear signature than we're used to with Stan Lee. Sold for $69,000. I had this one going for $71,000. So again, right in line, like no big surprises there. Record was $144,000 during the comic boom. It has definitely come down from there, but selling right in line with what I would expect it to go for. All right, let's keep moving on. I know I'm touching on a lot of these right now, but we've got Hero for Hire number 1. I was watching this one because we had not seen a 9.8 come up for sale for quite a while. And then we've had like 3 or 4 in the last year. And so it's definitely had an impact on prices. Record sale for that first one that came out was $102,000. Then they keep kind of trending down. I had this one going for $43,000 because the one that just sold like 2 months ago went for, I think, like $48,400, somewhere in that range. So I thought maybe this would come down even a little more, but actually beat that last sale, $49,200. So I felt like that was a pretty solid sale for this book. Seemed to have like stemmed the bleeding a little bit, beat my estimate by 14%. The other thing I thought was interesting with this one is that if you look at when this book was graded, it was graded much more recently. So you've obviously got the concern with like Bengate and all of that. And you can see how the book is shifted to the right. What I've heard, it seems like to try to prevent that is they've started putting those little, you call them like the plastic inserts on the sides to give more rigidity. You can see one of them down here, but those plastic inserts in here to give more rigidity to the plastic in the case to prevent it from bending. I don't know if that's the case, but it did have this, it makes it shift over to the right, which I don't really like the look of that. It's off center with the label, but had a big sale. Bidders didn't care. Sold for $49,200, actually a step up from the last sale. All right. Now this was a really big book, and I think it was unfortunate. I think Heritage did a disservice to this book here. This is More Fun number 52, first appearance of the Spectre. And what I mean is that this book does not come up for sale almost ever, especially not in this type of grade. And we just had a 6.0 sell in the last auction. And then in this one, they put in a 6.5. Now I know if the seller wants to sell it or whatever, they're going to sell the book. But if it was me, I would have held off on selling this book for maybe 6 or 8 months, if not more than that, just so that you don't have 2 copies of this, almost identical copies, right back to back. I mean, that's always a risk out there, but I thought that was unfortunate to see with this one. So I think somebody got a really good deal with this book. I mean, a 6.5 white pages that went for less than the six. And I think it's because we had these like two nearly identical books, like very rare, especially in grade books, selling back to back. But that's why I think that one underperformed. I had it going for 140. Let me see. I had it going for 140,000, so 23% below my estimate. One of the bigger underperformers, especially from the big key books that were part of this auction. All right, now to the first 9.9. We have a New Mutants 98, 9.9, first appearance of Deadpool. This book sold for $24,000. Now, if you're familiar with this one, that is definitely a step down from what this book has sold for during the comic boom. Had a peak sale of $42,000, but given the prices that we've seen in other grades, this isn't a big surprise. It's a bit of an underperformance. I had it going for 26,500, so 9% below my estimate, but still a very significant sale for this book. I mean, let's just look at New Mutants 98. New Mutants 98 in a 9.8, what that book sells for. And then, this $24,000 sale for a 9.9. 9.8, last sale, 1,080. I mean, let's look at these sales. I mean, this book is selling right around $1,000 right now. This one sold for 24,000. So 24 times approximately what the 9.8 sells for. And I've talked about that a lot before. I often see 20 to 30x for that 9.9. Still was the case here. It's just that the 9.8 has dropped a lot. And so you'd expect the 9.9 to drop as well. But yeah, I mean, 9.9s, there doesn't matter. They still sell for a ton of money. And so it's been very impressive to see the numbers that these are still commanding. All right, let's keep scrolling down. We've got some big books right here. This one, I was sad to see. I mean, I'm torn on this because I would have loved to have upgraded my copy. So I always like seeing books that I own have big numbers, but I would have loved to upgrade my copy. But this went outside what my price range was. This is Startling Comics number 49. This is the Bender cover, Alex Schomburg cover. I've said it before. It is my favorite cover of the Golden Age. And so this is a 9.0, sold for $40,800. I had this one going for $30,000, had a prior record of $20,763. We had an 8.5 Crippen sell for like $28,000 recently. So, I mean, this was a monster sale. 40,800, 36% over my estimate. A lot of bidding must have gone on for this copy because before the live sale started, it was at about 29,000. So got another $10,000 plus in bids. Now the next one, this was one of the marquee books in this auction, Suspense Comics number 3. I talked about this a lot in my prior video just because I feel like the value proposition has gotten out of whack with it. It's gotten very expensive. This one I had going for 185,000. So went for 156,000. So it was a big sale, but I felt like it underperformed for what I thought it could have done. But honestly, I don't really mind because like I've said, I do think that the pricing had been getting a little out of whack with it. We've been seeing a lot of copies up for sale, which often tells you that the pricing is getting out of whack because people are willing to let it go. But 156,000, I mean, $40,000 a point is still very, very significant for this book. Just underperforming from what I thought it would do, 16% below my estimate. All right, now let's keep scrolling down here. We'll talk about a couple Detective Comics. This was another one that I felt like it was similar to the More Fun 52. I felt like it was a mistake to put this one up so quickly. And again, I know if the person wants to sell it, they're going to sell it. You can't really do anything about it. But we had a Detective Comics 18 in a 7.5 sell as part of the Christine Farrell collection like 2 months ago. And then to have another one come up right now, it's too many of these rare, especially rare and grade books to put back to back. You overwhelm the demand for it. And so this one went for 28,800. The prior sale for that other copy was 34,800. So it's a drop of $6,000. It's a White Pages copy. I don't remember if the other one was White Pages. I had it going for 32,000. I did expect it to drop some because it sold back to back, but dropped even more than I was expecting. So 10% below my estimate. Again, it's a solid sale, but I think with books like that, when they're that rare, especially in grade, putting them for sale so close together is a risk. It's a pretty big risk, and so I think that resulted in this underperformance for this book. Now, here's one of the other big marquee books that was in this auction: Detective Comics number 38, First Appearance of Robin, 8.0, white pages copy. Prior record 38,500. I had it going for 115,000. Went for 132,000. So beat my estimate by 15%. Really solid sale for that book. This is one we have seen quite a few copies of this one come up for sale. So I wasn't sure how that was going to do. I thought it might underperform a bit because of that, but definitely not. His first appearance of Robin, it's one of the most iconic covers of all time. So really impressive sale for that book. All right, let's keep moving along here. Let's find some more cool books. Now, there was some books that I didn't price out, but were I looked at afterwards that looked really impressive. Were a lot of these more obscure books, like Slam Bang Comics number 3, Platinum. This is right on the edge of Platinum Age stuff, like New Adventure Comics number 28. I mean, a lot of these more obscure books, Surefire Comics number 2. I was seeing some really big numbers with the more, like I said, the more obscure items. So definitely something interesting to see. Now, this is following that trend. Superman seemed to be doing pretty well. DC in general seemed to be doing pretty well, and it could be because of that trailer. Superman number 3 in a 7.0 sold for $17,400. I had this one going for $15,000. Prior record was $16,800. So new record, beat my estimate by 16%. Solid sale for that book. All right, keep moving along here. I talked about this one in my preview video. I really like this cover. It's kind of like a superhero, but also pre-code horror type cover or vibe for that cover. All American 61, first appearance of Solomon Grundy. I had this one going for $24,500. Prior record, $28,771. So beat my estimate by 8%. I mean, again, that's just about as close as you can really hope to get within 10% with this rare stuff. But not a new record, but still a very solid sale. Again, beating my estimate, $26,400. White pages copy, which is why I talked about it in my prior video. I was expecting to go towards the upper end of my range because of the page quality, but yep, great book and a strong sale. This is another one. Man, this one shocked me. And again, I love seeing books that I own have big sales. I was expecting a decent sale for this book, but I've seen the prices for Archie number 50, this classic Betty cover, seen the prices kind of trending down some with it, but this did not. This one, prior record was $8,400. Based on what the other sales and other grades had done, I was expecting around $8,400, maybe $9,000, but $14,400. Monster sale. Beat my estimate by 71%. Looking quickly through that, I mean, it's not the biggest outperformer, but it's close. This was a very strong sale, in my opinion, and just that classic Betty cover. It is one of the most in-demand covers from the Archie run, or in-demand books from Archie in general. All right, now we had this astonishing 30. I talked about this one that I thought this one might underperform some because this book sold very recently, this exact same book, and sold for $36,000 and then came up for sale again. And I speculated that it's because the person got it in hand. And when you take a close look at this one, it doesn't really feel like a 9.2. And maybe they weren't happy with this copy. And so I was expecting a drop in the price for this book. I had it going for $30,000, went for the prior record was 36 when this one sold, went for 29,400. So it did drop like I expected, just a tiny bit more than I thought it might. But that's why I was kind of expecting a drop in price for this book. I think it's the single highest graded, but it's one of those that it doesn't really feel like it, just based on the looking at close up at the condition of this book. So here we had these two copies of Batman number 1 that came up for sale, a 1.5 where Stan Lee signed the case, which was pretty funny, and then this 1.0 here. Now, this is one of those things where you have two very similar big books like this. They're probably going to hurt each other's price. Also, the first one that sold, the 1.5, had brittle pages, which is likely never does that well on Heritage. Brittle pages often gets hurt on Heritage. So this one I had going for 85,000, went for 72,000. So pretty big underperformer, 15% below my estimate. Then we had the 1.0 that sold for, you can see here, sold for 63,000. I had that one going for 70,000. So 10% below my estimates. Now, I do think that probably because this one sold for 72, it likely resulted in this one selling for less because someone didn't want to pay more for a 1.0 than a 1.5 that just sold. So I think, those two probably played off of each other and impacted the sales numbers. But I mean, it's a Batman #1. The thing with the 1.5 is I feel like it might not be a 1.5 anymore based on the large amount of chipping in there. Like if there's been more splitting or anything like that, it might be a 1. And so that could have impacted the pricing and everything on it to the sales numbers on it. But still, it's Batman #1, huge key book. And we see these come up for sale in almost every major auction. And it's unfortunate when you see two right back to back like that, because it's definitely going to impact the sales numbers. But both of those underperformed, in my opinion, by 15% on the 1.5 and 10% on the 1.0. All right, so let's keep moving along here. I don't want to keep you for too long. There's a lot of books to talk about, and I've only covered a small fraction of them so far, so I just can't talk about everything. But one that really jumped out here, LB Cole. He always, I've heard that like in direct sales, the LB Cole sales aren't doing quite as well, but in auctions, I'm seeing big numbers for those books. Contact Comics #12. Me personally, I do not like this cover. It feels very like rudimentary, very simple. I don't really like the style of this cover, but I am not necessarily the buyer because this book always does really, really well. And this was no exception. This was an 8.0 that sold for $18,000. I had this one going for 13,500, beat my estimate by 33%. So really, really significant sale for this book. It doesn't come up for sale often in these grades, but big numbers for that one. We also had this Crime Patrol 15. I was wondering what this one was going to do because we had the Roger Hill copy that sold in a prior auction for a huge number, which I didn't expect to be repeatable. I think people were paying up big numbers specifically to own Roger Hill books. So this one, I was expecting a retreat in the sales number for it. So I had this copy going for $11,000. Prior record was 12,000. I think the Roger Hill was like a 6.0 or a 7.0 that had a really big number, but sold for 16,800. So new record, new big sale, 53% over my estimate. Yeah, I mean, just a monster sale for this one. This is the first appearance of the Crypt of Terror, and I believe the first Crypt Keeper. Let me double check real quick. So yeah, first appearance of Crypt Keeper and the first Crypt of Terror. And so definitely a big sale for that one. And yeah, I'm sure the Roger Hill sale helped push it up, but I just wasn't sure what type of impact that was going to have long term. Then we had a couple Detective Comics. These two underperformed, in my opinion. The Detective Comics 36 and 37. I had the 36 going for 22,000, and it went for 19,200. And the 37 going for 17,000 and went for 14,400. So, I mean, personal opinion, I think if you can get early Detective Comics for what I perceive as a deal, and I feel like those two were deals, that's a great buy. But definitely underperformed, in my opinion, for what they sold for. Whereas the Tech 38, this 2.5 restored copy, 19,200, that one did really well. I had it going for 14,000. So 19,200, beat my estimate by 37%, solid sale for another copy of the first appearance of Robin, but a restored copy. Maybe the earlier sale for the 8.0 really helped this one. I don't know, but I felt like that was a big sale for that book. All right, let's keep moving on here. So here was an interesting one. This is More Fun number 55. It is a 7.0 White Pages copy. This, to me, was an example of buying the grade, not the book. So if you take a close look at this book, this spine, I don't know what's going on. Like, this is rough. I don't know if this is split or if it's like the paper is like separate, the ink is separating at the spine. I mean, look at this. Like, I'd be afraid this staple is almost going to detach. I mean, this, I don't know. I don't know what's going on with this book. I mean, you can see it's a really old serial number. And so somebody got it recased. I mean, I wonder, we don't know the date because CGC hasn't added the dates back in, even though they said they were going to. We don't have the dates back in. But we have full left of whole book, light bend, spine, small wear, breaks color. Like, that feels like old graders notes. Like, and maybe something has happened in the case like over 20 years. I mean, I feel like that one was not regraded when it was sent in for recasing. And like, I do not think that this can be a 7.0 with that spine. I do not see it. And so when I was looking at this, I go, okay, how are people going to notice that? Is it going to get bid on accordingly? And so that's why I priced it at 15,000, which is more like a 4.0 type price for this book. Like, if we jump over to More Fun, number 55, and we look at the pricing for this book. So you can see here, like a 2.0 for 9,600, 6.5, 27, 7.5, 50,000, a 1.0, 6,000. We had a 5.5 for 18.6. So like I said, like 15,000. I was thinking somewhere between that 2.0 and that 5.5. Sold for 30,000, right in line, more than the last 6.5. Like, that's, I mean, it's buying the grade. Like, people always say like buy the book, not the grade, but it's generally not what happens, even with mega books like this $30,000 book. And yeah, I mean, this, I mean, I could be wrong, but this does not look like a 7.0 spine to me at all. It's still, I mean, otherwise it is a nice book. So it's not like I'm saying it's like a 2 or a 1 or something, but I mean, like a 4, maybe a 5, but I don't see this book as a 7.0, but it got a 7.0 price because it says 7.0 in the corner. But yeah, I thought that was one I just wanted to point out because that was, to me, that was a really crazy one. All right. This I just want to call out because it's wild how much this book sells for. This is Peanuts number 1. I mean, Peanuts is just, it's a hugely popular set of characters and everything, but a 7.0 for $18,000. Prior record, 9,300, and not that long ago. I had it going for 9,300. I thought it would hold that price. Almost doubled it. Went for 94% over my estimate. I mean, Peanuts number 1, 7.0. These books are tough in grade, but man, $18,000. Huge sale for that book. Then we had this one. This is a pretty solid sale. I was watching this just because it's a cool cover. It's a Chesler. I think it was a 1.0 brittle pages, which often the brittle pages, like I've said, don't tend to do so well on Heritage, but this one did really well. This was a strong sale for this book. I had it going for 7,500. Prior record was $362. So that was a number of years ago, but it just shows you how much these books have gone up. But I had it going for 7,500, went for $10,200 or 36% over my estimate. All right, let's keep moving along here. Let's try to get to a little bit more of the modern stuff here. But just this one, I just wanted to call out because I was hoping I could maybe win this book. This has the best color strike I think I have ever seen on it. This is an LB Cole cover. And this is an example of like this cover versus that Contact Comics 12. Like, the level of detail and quality of the art here is not even comparable. But, you know, this is Thrilling Crime Cases number 49. A 7.0 went for $8,400. I had this one estimated at $6,500. Its prior record was $1,178. But we've had other bigger sales since then. But definitely other people agreed that the color strike on this one was just incredible, just amazing colors, and it got bid up accordingly. $8,400, beat my estimate by 29%. All right. Now let's get on to some silver and bronze and modern stuff. If you stuck with me until now, first one, we had a major Silver Age key, obviously Amazing Fantasy 15, first appearance of Spider-Man, went for $69,000. I had this one going for $67,500. So Beat my estimate by 2%, but pretty much right in line. Prior record was 96,000 during the comic boom. It's come down from there, but a solid sale. And this is what I'm talking about. I saw a lot of really solid or right in line sales for the Silver Age, including these two, which again, we had a 7.5 and an 8 sell in the last Heritage auction. We had sell again. And so 7.5, or let's see, the 8.0 I had going for 43,000, went for 45,600. So just a little bit over, 6% over. The 7.5 went for just over $30,000, and I had it going for 30,000. You can see 30,068. And so almost exactly in line for that book. Then one that had a really solid sale was this 9.2 Amazing Spider-Man number 9, $12,600 for 9.2 White Pages copy. I had it going for 9,800. Prior record was 14,334. So not a record, but strong sale for that book. And that was generally true across the board for Spider-Man. So the 14 went for 13,200. I had it going for 10,000, beat my estimate by 32%. The 20 went for 28,800. I had it going for 25,000, beat my estimate by 15%. And the 50 went for 11,400. I had it going for 9,500, beat my estimate by 20%. So see here, just like book after book after book, beating my estimates in the Silver Age. And even getting up into the Bronze Age, I'll say the 101, the first appearance of Morbius, a little tiny bit of a disappointment. I had it going for 20,000, went for 19,200. So 4% below, but pretty much right in line. And then that Amazing Spider-Man 129, first appearance of Punisher, I had it going for 18,000, went for 19,800, or 10% over. So, I mean, just really consistent, solid, strong sales in this era. Now we've got some pretty cool books here. We have the 9.9 of Amazing Spider-Man 238. This is, I think, one of two. This sold for $31,200 for this 9.9. I had it going for 23,000, beat my estimate by 36%. So again, 9.9s commanding huge, huge numbers. I think this was around a 30x multiple, something like that. I mean, this was a big sale for this book. And here we go. Amazing Spider-Man 667. This is the 1 in 100 Delato variant 9.8. This was the book that was moving with Ultimate Fallout 4, the Jurjevic variant. You can see here, this book has held up quite a bit better. Now, that's not surprising to me. I've said that before. I thought that this was the superior book. This book also had a much higher value going into the comic boom. It was already like a $15,000 to $20,000 book versus Ultimate Fallout 4, which was like a $2,000 to $3,000 book at that time. And so this one went for 28,800, which is a drop from its peak sale of 43,200. But when you look at the Jurjevic variant, that book is now selling around, I mean, there was a low sale for a CBCS 9.8 of like 5,400, but it's going for around 8,000 to 10,000. Whereas this one, 28.8. There are a lot less copies of this book, so it's not going to come up for sale nearly as often. I did say in my prior video, I think that if it comes up for sale again, it is going to continue to tick down, but very respectable sale for this book. Definitely regains, you'd say, or its title as the king of the modern grails. And so 28,800 for a 9.8. Such a cool cover. I love that cover. Then we had a couple 9.8s for these Batman keys. The Batman 251 is just the classic Joker cover, Neil Adams Joker cover, and Batman 232, first appearance of Ra's al Ghul. So Batman 232, both of these underperformed my estimates a little bit. I had this one going for 10,000, went for 9,000, so 10% below my estimate. And the 251 I had going for 30,000. There was a huge sale, 39,600 in the last Heritage auction, which I felt like was a big outlier. I didn't think that was repeatable, but I had it going for 30, went for 26,400. So retreated some, but there have been a number of these 9.8s coming up for sale recently. So you don't have to overpay for them. They will come out. Just, pick the book and go for it. Then we had this Daredevil #1, another example of a Silver Age book that performed really, really well. Went for 43,200. I had this book going for 33,000. I mean, I was surprised. I don't know if it's, again, because of the Daredevil show that's going to be coming up. Like, are we getting things where spec is impacting prices again? But $43,200 is a very solid sale for this book. 9.4 Daredevil #1. All right, we'll keep moving along here. Now, this was probably the most shocking sale I saw in the entire auction. Green Lantern #59. And this is where I'm saying, like, I don't know if that Superman trailer had an impact on this or what, because you can see here, this is the first appearance of Guy Gardner, who makes an appearance in that Superman trailer. And so I don't know if that's what had an impact on this or what, but I had this book going for $13,000. It sold for $30,000. It just wild number for that book. Crazy. So, I mean, and we can go look at it just so you don't think like, oh, he massively underpriced that book or something like that. I mean, let's look at these. Let's look at these sales. So we've got 9.8 Pacific Coast Pedigree, 9,000 in 2023. Comic Boom, Twin Cities, 9.8, 10,200. If we look at 9.8s here, 2018, 8,200, 2014, 5,000. I mean, this is just a huge number, like a huge number that I was not expecting to see for this book. And so that one beat my estimate by 131%. I believe that was the biggest outperformer that I saw in this entire auction. Now, we did have another big, Green Lantern key. This is first appearance of John Stewart in a 9.8, sell for $10,800. I had this one going for $7,200. This one had been trending down too. This is a big sale, 50% over my estimate. So those DC books, the key books, doing surprisingly well. And we had the Journey in Mystery 83. This is a beautiful 8.0. The colors on this one are really, really nice. This is an 8.0. Journey in Mystery 83 went for $38,400. I had this one going for $35,000, beat my estimate by 10%. So, like I said, I was seeing really respectable sales for these Silver Age, Bronze Age, modern books. And it was just, not across the board, obviously. There were some that underperformed, but a lot better than I'd been seeing the last few years. Now, this one was still a pretty big underperformer, but I'm not shocked. This book needs to come down more. It's still very, very elevated. So Marvel Spotlight 5, first appearance of Ghost Rider. I had this book going for $14,500, had a Comic Boom record of $30,001, sold for $12,000, or a underperformer of 17%. So definitely underperformed. And I think it could still come down more personally. Now, two more that underperformed. And again, it could be because they're selling back to back. Also, not the greatest looking copies, so that could have hurt them some too. So we had Showcase #4. We had a 6.0. I had it going for $28,000, went for $27,600. Prior record was $37,200. Now, I did price this one lower. And a big part of the reason why is you can tell this book must have had color touch, and that color touch was removed. And it definitely impacts the visual appeal of this book. You can see that color touch that was scraped off kind of like all over the cover. And so I think that really had an impact on the sales price for that book. Then one sale later, we had a 5.0. Now this is a pretty solid looking copy. It does have kind of this like little bit of damage along the top edge that again takes away from the visual appeal a bit, but it's a pretty solid looking copy. But I think that the 6.5 sale ultimately hurt this one. The 6.0 sale hurt this one, having them sell back to back. But that one I had going for $26,000, and it went for $21,600. So 17% below my estimate. So this one was a pretty big underperformer. You don't usually see two of these sell back to back. So that's, again, one of those things I feel like it ends up overwhelming demand a bit when you do that. And when you have a 6.0 that just doesn't look that great and that one underperforms, I'm not surprised that then the 5.0 also underperforms. All right, let's keep moving along here. We're getting close to the end here. So one book I wanted to call out was A Strange Tales 169. Specifically because I remember when the Comic Boom kicked off, there was a monster sale for this in a 9.8. It was like $20,000. And I remember making a video talking about it. And I was just like, that's a crazy sale. It doesn't make any sense. And I had people giving me a hard time about it. They're like, oh no, that's what this book should sell for. It's so rare and great. And it's going to be the next big character and everything. And now it's sold for $7,200. So, I mean, Those huge outliers, those huge big jumps, like just expect them to come back. So if you see books that are still really high compared to where they were prior to the comic boom, just be cautious with them. So this one I had going for 7,000, went for 7,200. So right in line, but a big drop from its peak sale of $27,000. That was the absolute peak that this book sold for during the comic boom. And yeah, I mean, that just, it's a Bronze Age book. You're gonna get more copies coming out. Like when that type of thing happens, you can see here there are 29 and 9.8. That's just, it's not that rare in a 9.8 for what is a relatively obscure character, you know. And so it just, to me, that type of book just doesn't command a number like 20 or $30,000, especially when you've got books like First Appearance of Punisher selling for less than 20. You know, it can't command that type of number. But yeah, so that's one that I wanted to point out because it was one of the books that really kicked off that comic boom. One of the big outliers I first saw, and just kind of showing where it has come back to. And the last two that I'm going to talk about here is that this was another one of those, Werewolf by Night 32, First Appearance of Moon Knight. This one definitely kicked off the comic boom as well, had some big sales. So this one had a peak sale in a 9.6 of 26,500. I had it going for 7,200. Went for 7,200. So right in line, but again, showing like how much some of these books have retreated. But also that means that, you know, depending on the book and the grade and everything, some of them are definitely getting more appealing, and why we are seeing the prices not have these big drops and, you know, selling around what you expect them to, or even doing a little better. The last one here I'm going to close out with, because we keep seeing this book and I'm just always surprised how much it continues to sell for. So this X-Men 94, 9.8 off-white to white pages sold for 38,400. I had it going for 34,000. With the number of copies we've been seeing coming up, I keep thinking it's going to keep dropping, but it has been having consistently solid, strong sales. Record sale, 72,111 during the comic boom. This is down from the last sale. So if you look at X-Men number 94, but that one, in my opinion, was again a huge outlier. And so that's why, even though I saw that big sale, I didn't price it on that because I didn't think it was repeatable. But you can see here, there was that big sale near the end of 2024 here for 55,200. But look at all the other ones, you know, 27, 31, 34. And so that's why I priced it at 34, and it sold for, still had a solid sale, 38,400, still beat that estimate. So yeah, X-Men 94, it's really been, you know, doing really, really well in a 9.8. It is much more rare than Giant Size X-Men 1 in the 9.8. That's why it commands that premium. But Giant Size X-Men 1, I think, is the more desired book overall. But those are all the books we talk about. Appreciate it if you stuck with me throughout this video. Again, surprisingly strong auction here to kick off the year. Like I said at the beginning, at first I thought maybe it was, you know, when I was going through things that it might have been a little weaker. But then when I actually looked at the numbers, 63% overall beat my estimates for this auction, with 60% beating my estimates with the Golden Age, 75% with the Silver Age, 64% with the Bronze Age. Modern was the one underperformer, with the caveat that there are only 5 books. So 40%, two of the 5 beat my estimate with the Modern. But yeah, really solid auction, and I'll be interested to see how the follow-up sessions do as well. But hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit that like button, subscribe button, notification bell, and I will see you on the next one.